Let me quickly go across to our special panel on Newsnight tonight. Before that, let's talk about the in focus or the talking point tonight. On Newsnight, we talk about the India-US defense cooperation, the in focus agenda on Newsnight. Can we play that graphics, please? India's multifaceted defense cooperation with the United States of America. The roadmap that has been inked, signed, agreed upon between India and United States. Vice Admiral Pradeep Chauhan, Director General National Maritime Focus, joining us on the show. Thank you very much, sir. Vice Admiral Chauhan, such a pleasure talking to you. Yes.
Pleasure is mine in entirety. Thank you very much. I'm the Director General of the National Maritime Foundation and hopefully will bring some focus to bear.
Sure, sir. Also, let me take this opportunity to welcome Higher DD India's correspondent joining us from Washington as well. I'm going to come to you, Higher, in a bit. Before that, just to set the ball rolling as far as the larger picture, the big messaging, the optics of it, and the larger matrix of the defense cooperation between India and US, Admiral Chauhan is concerned. What does India bring to the table and what does US bring to the table? Together, what do they bring to the table at this juncture when there's so much of talk about Russia, China, etc.?
Well, thank you very much. India and the United States bring to the table a great many things which actually transcend technology. The first of them is a commonality of value systems, a belief in democracy, a belief in the rules-based order, and an unwillingness to actually have the global rules-based order defined and described and specified in only one capital rather than being consensually derived. So in broad terms, that is what India brings to the table. Second, in terms of technology, India is no longer a supplicant in a large number of areas of technology, although a number of Indians tend to downplay Indian capabilities in niche areas of technology. And if you look at some of these issues ranging from quantum computing, quantum cryptography, artificial intelligence, cyber, electronic warfare, innovation. India comes to this table not as a supplicant, but as a peer, and willing to teach, willing to learn, willing most of all to partner. Thank you.
Sir, stay with us. Let me quickly go across to Benji. Hi, my colleague joining us live from Washington. Benji, so for US, why is this important? And just to take a cue from Secretary Lloyd's statement, he started by saying the trust. There was this mention, multiple mention of the word trust.
Well, let's answer that question by looking at the statement that you just pointed out, which is that during these meetings, the counterparts exchange perspectives on a range of security issues. And I think this is the key bit. They said they are committed to collaborating closely in support of their shared vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific. That certainly was the theme of these meetings, with the increased perceived threat from China, and also laying the groundwork for Prime Minister Modi's visit to the United States in just a matter of weeks' time. Out of that, there could certainly be some announcements about defense cooperation and deals, military equipment such as drones that could be deployed, for example, along the India-Chinese border. And China, of course, in the news in the past 24 hours because of their naval ship that came close to the US vessel in the Taiwan Strait. Also from the statement, they were talking about their new roadmap for US-India defense industrial cooperation. Again, another example of how the two nations want to work closely together on a number of different forums. But I would point out one small thing, which is that in this statement, I've read it in full, no mention yet of Ukraine. Certainly one of the issues where the two nations find it a bit more difficult to see eye to eye.
Well, that's an interesting point that you've pointed out there, raised. In fact, I would like to take that to Admiral Chauhan. Would you like to comment on that? Because there is also this narrative that, this will also lessen India's, I wouldn't use the word dependence on or the traditional dependence on Russia for the defense supplies.
Well, I think that these three issues need to be, we need to be careful before we conflate all these three issues and make an amalgam out of them. Drawing 3 plus 3 plus 3 to make 333. So let me be candid about this. This meeting and these relationships between India and China and the United States are not necessarily to be seen as a mutually exclusive bin, as opposed to the, say, relationships that India continues to enjoy with Russia. India is unable and unwilling to abandon one set of friends simply in order to please another. And I think that the United States sees sufficient value in the Indian partnership to understand this. The United States government is hardly naive about international affairs and international relations. And I think that the non-mention of the Ukraine conflict is neither here nor there, except in the minds of perhaps some segments of a more excitable audience. Insofar as this is concerned, I really do believe that the India-United States relationship is growing by leaps and bounds, and it is being led very largely through the Indo-Pacific, through the concept of the rules-based order within the Indo-Pacific. And the Indo-Pacific is predominantly, even if not exclusively, a maritime construct. So for the first time, we are seeing a genuine outburst of technological exchanges relevant to the maritime domain in general and to naval prowess of both countries in particular. So I think it was significant that we mentioned the underwater domain awareness issues and the underwater domain as such. And I rather think that we could pursue this without prejudice to our other imperatives of dealing with other countries on their own merits. Thank you.
Point taken, sir. So stay with us. Benji, quickly coming to you again. Now, this whole point, I mean, just to understand the US's perspective on this, to offset or counter weight to China's so-called dominance and its belligerence, India is extremely important?
Certainly. In fact, one of a number of nations that Lloyd Austin has been visiting as part of a wider trip to the region, including Singapore. And I think that is certainly to go to some of the powerhouses in the Indo-Pacific to reinforce how important peace and security is in that region for the United States. And that's amid months of increased tensions between Washington and Beijing, escalating, as I mentioned before, just in the past 24 hours with that ship in the Taiwan Strait, which the US claims was performing unsafe maneuvers, whilst China blames the US for deliberately provoking risk. And I think amid all that, there's a sense that the United States wants to secure allies in the region, both politically and economically, and not necessarily cause any sort of conflict with China, but certainly promote competition and try to prove to the likes of India that the United States is a reliable partner, both politically and economically, and that for many different nations, China is not the only state with which to have those ties, but the US is present and available for political or trade opportunities, and having a presence on the ground with Lloyd Austin doing that trip certainly reinforces that point.
And that one last one from you before I go to Admiral Chauhan to take this discussion forward, that criticality of the fact that US wants to really bolster ties with India. I'm specifically talking about military to military contact, cementing it further with the world's largest democracy. I mean, if US wants it.
Well, this might be something that's developed.
Go ahead, please.
Well, this might be something that's developed further. This might be something that's developed further with Prime Minister Modi's visit to Washington, D.C., that state visit in a matter of weeks' time. I'm sure on the back of that there'll be a number of pronouncements in terms of defence cooperation. And what Lloyd Austin's visit does is lay the groundwork, set the basis for that visit, so there is an agreement on terms, and that so President Biden and Prime Minister Modi can stand side by side with a certain amount of consensus on these key issues.
All right. Admiral Chauhan, now this one, if you would have to just put this in an Indian perspective.
Okay. So let me be quite candid about this. The aggressive rise of China, China's moves within the South China Sea as exemplars of what it could or couldn't do. And more importantly, the fact that China's presence in the Indian Ocean is now steadily growing to approximately 8 to 10 vessels at any given point in time. The fact that China has only recently renamed 9 undersea seabed mounts within the Indian Ocean, the fact that Chinese space and telemetry ships such as the Yuan Wang class are frequenting our waters, none of this gives us any sense of comfort. So when the Chinese sometimes ask us, why are you upset with us when other countries do not seem to evoke the same reactions in you, I think that the answer lies in the fact that it's a function of transparency of intent and transparency of purpose. And we tell them that the other countries that you are referring to do not tell us that they have to bring in nuclear-powered submarines in order to counter piracy. And therefore, this kind of approach is not only condescending, but it is downright insulting. And consequently, now coming to the substantive part of your question, and that is that the United States of America needs India quite as much as India needs the United States of America in the geopolitical gameplay that is currently underway. And if India can, and it's really encouraging to see the government of India taking robust action for India to step up to the plate, to carry the weight that India needs to and can carry within the cusp area ranging from the cusp area between the Indian and Pacific Oceans, namely Southeast Asia, and extending westwards all the way across to the eastern littoral of Africa. And now if India concentrates upon securing the energy lines, securing the trade that is so critical, not only from the United States, but from a number of countries, including the European Union, across to countries of Southeast Asia and East Asia, then the United States will be able to concentrate its abilities in a more proximate area while India holds the flank. Both these issues require a significant amount of trust.
Right.
And I think that that is the one feature which is growing exponentially. There was a time not so long ago when a large number of people used to say that the USA is simply not a reliable partner, pointing out this or that aberration to their values. But currently, I think that these voices are quite correctly being muted, not by words, not by further, utterances by people like me or by you, but simply by the actions on the ground. And so we are seeing Navy-to-Navy cooperation, we are seeing Army-to-Army cooperation, defense industry cooperation, and unless Indian defense industry can be brought into this equation in a major manner, India will not be able to achieve the technological leaps that it is capable of. And as I said in the very beginning, we are not approaching the United States as a supplicant. We are approaching them as a peer, and that too in the cutting edge of technology. So we should all be quite proud of the fact that we are able to do so today.
Cutting edge technology, Benji, final quick word, because before we wrap it up, cutting edge technology peers, that's how India and US look at each other, and especially the significance of Secretary Austin's visit to India, coming close on the heels of our Prime Minister's visit to your country.
Certainly. Well, let's revert back just briefly to that statement on the note of technology and cooperation. I mentioned those India defence industrial corporations. That specifically, and I'm quoting the statement here, will fast-track technology cooperation and co-production in a number of different sectors: air combat, land mobility, intelligence, surveillance, munitions, undersea domains, areas which I'm sure Defence Boss will like to get a keen look at. And I think, as I said before, this is kind of the basis of some sort of wider deal that could be unveiled when Prime Minister Modi visits here at the end of June, which would be a mightily significant trip for India and both the United States, seeing those two leaders shake hands, standing side by side together at the White House.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Benji Haya, DD India's correspondent, joining us live from Washington. And many thanks, Admiral Chauhan. It was such a pleasure talking to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.